All right, welcome everybody here. We are on Duckman TV again. Have a special guest on tonight, a very, very esteemed special guest too. Shannon Shotgun O'Connell, and got Glen, Jennings, manager. So Shannon is a professional fighter for people out there who are unfamiliar with what she does, and professional boxer in bantamweight division. Is that what you're fighting in at the moment?
Yeah.
There you go. And she is in the process of organising, due to manager Glen, who's done a very good job actually promoting what Shannon does, in the process of organising a fight with Ebanie Bridges, the blonde bomber, who is a recent world title holder in the IBF division. So thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate making some time for me to have a chat about this in the lead up to the fight coming up. So how has this all come about? So just go into this and I'll start rolling some of the questions. How did this come about, Glen? How quickly did it happen? Because I know you've been looking for a title shot for a little while, Shannon, and seems to have like escalated pretty quickly once you got IBF approval here.
Yeah, look, it's about an 8-month adventure since I started managing Shannon, and right from the get-go, we made a commitment to her that we would work very hard to get her the world title. And so we've been really chasing this for probably 6 months out of that 8 months, and it's been a back and forth negotiation with the IBF just over some interpretations of rules. And fortunately for us in this instance, they looked at what we'd proposed and considered it and ruled in our favour, which now gives Shannon that opportunity to fight for the IBF bantamweight world title prior to September 26th. So it is a fairly quick elevation, considering that Shannon has been laid up with an extremely, like a career-ending injury with her shoulder reconstruction, and she's only been back for one fight. So very excited for her that she gets this chance.
Yeah, so I did see when you were doing the training, so when you come back from your recovery, that looked very hectic and extreme and very painful. Can you tell us about the shoulder injury? How did it come about? It was in your second last fight, wasn't it? Did you get damage from blows to the shoulder, or was it wear and tear over time?
I think the injury, I mean, like the main part of the injury happened in my fight, but it was coming, sort of wear and tear. I guess it was lucky for me that I got to the fight, because it probably could have happened the week before in my last spar, which, you know, that would have probably been even worse for me, because I wouldn't have got the fight, wouldn't have got the win. But it was, I had chunks of cartilage like the size of 50-cent pieces just sort of floating around in my shoulder, and my labrum tore. So my shoulder bone was just rolling around. I couldn't move without dislocating it. Like, it was just in and out constantly. So it happened. I remember, I think it was after the 6th round, I remember sitting in the corner and saying to my coach, I can't feel my arm. And I mean, adrenaline is a wonderful thing, because I got through 4 more rounds, but then within an hour after the fight, I couldn't lift my arm even like shoulder height. And yeah, I went and got scans, and pretty much within a week I was in surgery.
So was that like a major AC joint operation, like what they do, fully repin it all back together and the whole box and dice, or what happened with the operation?
They had to anchor the labrum in. So it was a complete labrum tear. So they had to, there's all anchors, and they had to anchor it all in and clean it all out. And yeah, I've basically gotten next to no cartilage left in my shoulder.
That's that doesn't sound like it's going to be a good long term. So you're 39 years old now, aren't you?
Yeah. So they said, like, if I was anyone else, that they would have done a shoulder replacement right then and there, but they knew that I wasn't done yet, and that I wouldn't have been happy coming out of surgery with them telling me that. So they did what they could, and they're going to get me through as much as we can get through. And yeah, I'm definitely not finished yet. So pain. As long as I can use the arm, I don't care about the pain. I'll deal with it.
Oh, absolutely. So the mental game is big. So I've never been in a fight game. I have been involved in like rugby league, union, and soccer over many, many years. So lots of stuff. I've got screws and bone fragments and cartilage in my ankles. So trying to hold things together that just shouldn't probably be there. So I can only imagine how bad your shoulder would be and what it takes to get up for it. You're an extremely fit professional athlete too. So I follow what you do, and now that I'm retired, I don't know if I could click it and get it going again. Just it's pretty intense, your training regime.
Yeah, I'm a super stubborn athlete at that. So
Yeah, you do look like that might be the case, but I suppose you need that in a sport, because boxing is a completely individual sport. You might have a team around you, but you've got to get out there and do it. And if you don't have that strong-willed desire, literally you're going to get belted to the shit out. So, and that was pretty strong motivating factor to make sure you prepare as well as you can and bring your A game every time.
Yeah.
So I have interviewed Arlene Blenko before. I believe you started fighting at or about the same time. So she told me she started fighting when she's about 26. She's also 39. So that would put back, did you start fighting about 12 years ago or something like that, 12, 13 years ago?
I had my first fight 19 years ago.
Oh, there you go. So how did you get into fighting? So what was it that drew you into the whole fight game? Did you come from a martial arts background anyway, or contact sports? What was the inspiring factor?
I'm actually from South Australia, so I used to play netball. I think nearly every girl in Adelaide plays netball at some point. And but I had a bad back, and my grandparents, I was living with them at the time, and 2Ks down the road from them was Foxy's gym, who Terry Fox used to race speedway with my dad. So they said, oh, why don't you go down there just to stay fit? And that was it. I just got hooked straight away, because for me, it was such a challenge, and I got addicted to how hard boxing was, because I had a rough childhood, and everything was hard. So I fell in love with boxing because it was so challenging and pushed me, because that's kind of how my life was. Like, everything was hard. So that's how I sort of related to it.
Yeah. Do you think that helped really be a motivating factor for you going forward to push you on? Having a tough upbringing, as opposed to like in rugby union, I live in Sydney. You get some guys, they call them private school boys, so they have a bit of an easier road to the top. We'll say that. So I don't want to disrespect anyone, because you get to the top because you put in a hard work. They have more opportunities than other people might not have if you're not from such an affluent background. Did that? So they're strong motivating factors for you?
For me, I guess it is. It's probably it's common in boxing. A lot of people get drawn to boxing because they've had that sort of upbringing, and but for me, it's definitely, the harder I've had to work for things, the more I guess I would appreciate it, the more it means to me. Everyone has their different things that motivate them, but for me, it's definitely, I feel that I've done all the work, and I deserve where I'm at, because of how hard it's been and how much I've had to overcome to get to where I am today. Yeah.
So Glen, you've been on the ride, said you've been in now for 9 months. Is that right?
With Shannon, about 8 to 9 months. Yep.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with Shannon and become manager? And you do a lot of work behind the scenes and keep all of the social stuff going by the look of it as well. So, which is it's crucial. You need that stuff. You need to get the promotion and the advertising out there, so you can get sponsorship and the money coming in.
Well, I wasn't actively looking for another fighter. I've got a busy schedule with Tim and Nikita Tszyu already, managing those boys. So their careers are taking off, and I've known of Shannon for a long time, and I've always admired the fact that she's one of very few elite women athletes that in our sport that trains at that level. And I was always a follower, and a mutual friend asked Shannon to give me a call when she was in a bit of a dark place with her boxing, and we just had a chat, and I think we hit it off. I've got 3 daughters, so I sort of knew that she was struggling a little bit with where she wanted to take her career, and she just rang me out of the blue and said, would I consider managing her and helping her in what's left of her career at 39 years. And I only had to think about it for a very short amount of time, because for me, it was more about giving somebody who's given so much to boxing, just reaching down and putting the hand out and saying, let's go and do this. So myself and Matt Rose from No Limits Boxing, our promoter, we were actually at the Star Casino in Sydney for one of Tim's fights when all this happened. And I rang Shannon back and said, you know what, let's do this. Let's give this 110%. You give me all of your trust, all of your faith, and all of your ability, and I'll do the rest. And so we set out on this fantastic journey. I'm so glad I did, because she's a terrific person as well as a special athlete. And now we're at the cliff face looking at a world title. So I'm very proud of her. I know what she's been through. A month ago, I've had the similar operation on my shoulder. So I'm in the early days of Shannon's my bounce off for rehab. I ring her every day and say, what do I do about this? My shoulder's killing me, blah, blah, blah. But we've got a great relationship, and we both know which direction we're going in. We chose a new team, a new manager, and new promoters. So for me now, Shannon at this time of her career now gets the best of everything to see just how far we can take her. And we're looking for the lot. We're not mucking around here. We're going for every single belt in the next year. So starting in September, very exciting time for her.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I've been following you for a couple of years on Instagram and stuff like that, Shannon. And the fight game looks very intense, and you always seem to be up for it all the time. Like, I see fighters that go through off periods. So even Arlene Blanco's told me she'll go in fight camp for 8 weeks or whatever, trying to keep your body in good shape most of the time. But you only really get serious 8 to 10 weeks out or whatever. You look like you're up all the time. So someone could call you tomorrow and say, let's do it, and you'll be all right. Let's do it. So you're up and ready for that. Seems to be maybe unusual for what I see with some of the other fighters around the world. And it's a massive tick in boxes for you. So for your preparation.
Yeah, I think for me, it's sort of a way of life. It's a way of me dealing with life. And I mean, I've just come back from Bali, and that was kind of a snap decision. And that was a forced break, because I knew if I didn't get out of here and do something, I was just going to keep training. And eventually, you just can't keep pushing yourself that far. And so I gave myself a forced break, came back, I'm refreshed, and I'm ready to go again. It was like I never had a break. So, but yeah, I do camps. So I do like the 8 to 10 weeks of flat out. And that's where I go like 2 to 3 sessions a day. When I'm not in camp, I train every day, but it's more so running and strength. And I try and give myself that break from boxing, because, you know, like I've been boxing for nearly 20 years. So I think it's just healthy.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Well, you need to start for it. So professional sports people I know, they do the same thing. To be at the top level, to be prepared, you can't have like 2 or 3 months off and go, I'll come back into it, because you'd be like 6 months behind by the time you put the 3 months in. Someone else has already got those 3 months plus an extra 3, and you're chasing your tail all the time. So you got a very impressive fight record too. So what, 30 pro fights at the moment, 23 wins, 11 knockouts, and 6 losses. So where do you think your pro career was going to go when you first started out?
Well, as an amateur, I was ranked number 2 in the world in the Olympic division, and that was when the women first came into the Olympics. So straight away from when I turned pro, I thought, I've made number 2 in the world, and that's not good enough. I want to be number 1 in the world as a pro. So that was my vision from the start. I have reached number 2. Currently, I'm number 3 in the world, and I'm talking like on BoxRec, so overall. There has been times where I thought, yeah, I'm not going to get there. Just, you know, let it go. But yeah, the stubbornness, I guess, kicked in, and I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm still going. I was actually telling Glen earlier, I've got a 3-year-old little boy. And I remember when I was pregnant with him, that my son, who was 12 at the time, begged me not to retire, because I was like, oh, well, I'm having a baby. I'm going to give everything. I've got 3 kids now. And he begged me not to retire. He told me that he would leave school and get homeschooled so he could look after the babies and I could train. So, I mean, when you've got people around you that want it for you that bad, like, you can't give up on it.
That's the most outstanding thing to hear your kids say that. So, and it's just love. They love you that much. They would do all of those things for you because they want to see you be successful. So, it says a lot about who you are as a mum as well, and the people around you in your life, including your kids and that. So it's really good story. What sort of expertise can you bring into the piece as well, Glenn? So you tied in with the Tszyu brothers.
Oh yeah. I had 16 years with Kostya, so my career in boxing and management along those lines, I've been to the highest levels with Kostya as undisputed champion. Kostya was the king of the welterweights for about 10 years. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly at the highest level of boxing. I also own the biggest entertainment security company in the country, and we operate literally within Australia and internationally. And I tour with majority of the big touring acts that come through. So in terms of management of people and management of athletes or VIPs, that's been my entire life since I was 19. And my company's still running strong 24 hours a day today. So what I bring to the party is to boxing, which is a little different to most managers, is a very successful business background. So I look at my fighters' careers for 4 major points, and they are their health, their welfare, their career, and their future. And those 4 things drive me to make sure that for what time they have left, whether they're just coming in or they're just going out, that we get the absolute maximum return in their overall picture of what they're trying to achieve. So not everybody's going to be a world champion, but I just so happen to have the three best fighters in the country. And it's a great place to be. And now we've got Shannon fighting for a world title and potentially straight into another world title next year. I've got Team Tszyu fighting in January for undisputed for all of the belts in his division. And younger brother Nikita is now going into his 4th pro fight. So we have a very small team, but a very, very strong base team that have only the best intentions of our fighters. You'll sometimes hear me refer to what I do, my group, as the fighters first management group. And that's how I like to look at it. The fighters come first, as they should. They are the athletes. They're the ones in there doing their hard yards. And my job's to create that perfect environment in every aspect to allow them to operate at 120%. And that's what I do.
That's really good to hear that, because back in the day when I was just a fight fan following fights, you used to see people like Don King. There's like a lot of smoke and mirrors about what he did. Everyone go, oh, he's an excellent fight promoter or whatever. But you hear about people, even Mike Tyson, go, oh, got ripped off, didn't get paid properly, and looking at the short-term picture, like what's happening right now in the next fight, and there was no sort of looking after long-term future, like what you just pointed out. You have your fight.
Really, I mean, there's a big difference between promoters and managers, and I don't believe they can mix. I think they have to be kept separately. The manager's job is to look after the fighter exclusively. So everything we do in terms of Shannon's fighting, who she fights, when she fights, that's a team decision that we make between Shannon, myself, and her coaches, and we come up with the names. We then go to our promoter, who's contracted to us to represent us in terms of putting together the fight and making the fight happen. So they're 2 completely separate fields, and we've got the best promoters in Australia, and Shannon has got myself as a management team, and we've got a great team of coaches. So she has the complete package to take her all the way. And in a very short time, Shannon's gone from being someone that was no longer on the radar because of her injury to literally being the most talked about female fighter in the world at the moment, apart from the girls that are doing the rematch, Taylor and Serrano. Right now, Bridges O'Connell is streaming and running amok on the social medias. Everybody wants this fight, and we've got it. So, it's super exciting. I'm just happy more than anything for Shannon that after 20 years, she's now finally going to get her opportunity, and she will bring this belt home, and that'll be the first of many that'll see her out of boxing in whatever time we decide it's ready for her to go. She can fight on as long as she likes. She's quite a freak in terms of athletic ability and dedication. So it'll be entirely up to her. It won't be a number that puts her out. It certainly won't be an age that puts her out. I think it'll be that she's achieved everything that she wants, and she's got the opportunity now to move on and live a great life for the kids.
Yeah, well, it's a very good position to be in, Shannon, absolutely. how frustrating is it being a fighter, being up like ranked number 3 in the world? Because I know that some of the people like Ebanie Bridges, she wasn't sitting at number 2, and like you said, you haven't fought her, so people are jumping the ranks. How does that work in boxing? You can go from, let's say, number 7 to getting a world title fight and then win that. Now all of a sudden, like there's people that might have had to have cut the hard yards like you've had and come into this on the back at 8 wins. So you have had an operation on your shoulder. You've been there and thereabouts, and it just looks like people have been skipping around or trying to avoid the fight path. How does that work?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is frustrating. There's probably been a few tears here and there over the years, but I'm a big one thing I really believe in is timing. And you know, if I was given these opportunities earlier, I might not have been ready for them. I might not have appreciated them. They might not have meant as much to me. So I mean, people keep saying to me, oh, you know, if only you met Glen 10 years ago, and I might not, it might not have worked 10 years ago. I might not have been mature enough to you know, take in everything he's taught me. And I believe, a massive believer in timing, and I think like now it's my time. So it's all sort of fallen into place.
It definitely happened for a reason. There's things in our lives that bring people together for whatever reason. And I certainly didn't expect that night to get a phone call from Shannon O'Connell and to have that discussion, but I'm so glad I did. And that's part of the beautiful part of boxing, is that at any given moment, and I do get a lot of calls in terms of asking the question, can I manage or represent a fighter? And I'm honest with them. I say, look, I can't, because one thing I do is if I take on these fighters, they get 100% of my attention, and 3 fighters is maxing out. And I also believe that the fighters that I've got deserve 100% of my attention. So I can't spread that any further. And that's the beauty of it, that you meet these people in your life. Shannon only 8 months ago came into my life, and I'm glad she did. And we'll remain friends long after boxing's done. And that's the beauty of it. As Costa and I still are best mates to this day.
That's good. That's really, really good to hear. I like those sorts of stories. It puts a lot of faith back in the fight game, because you see some stuff that happens sometimes in the fight game, and it's not all flattering for boxing or MMA with this stuff.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It's a tough sport. It's full of people with wrong intentions and people in it for the wrong reasons. So I guess in some respects we bring a little bit of a fresh air approach. But having said that too, management's part of the game. The big game is what these guys do in the ring. My work's in the background. I get things done. We strive for the best outcomes, but it all means nothing if the fighters don't win, and it all means nothing if the fighters don't believe in their managers. They've got to have full faith in me, as I do with them, and that's the ultimate combination. And that's why I believe now, after 20 years for Shannon, there's a reason why she didn't call me until now, because she's at that. She has at her peak probably 5 years after she should have been, which is a strange thing to say, but 5 years ago she may have had the athletic ability and everything else, but she wouldn't have had the mental capacity to take all this on board at this level. And you've got to be in a great place. And that was the first thing that we established when we got together, was to rework where she is in her life and everything, and put her in this right place. And she's a different girl to the one I met 8 months ago. And that really gives me great confidence going forward, that she's now got the complete package to deliver at the highest level. And we'll see come September, the first test, and then we'll move on from there.
We do, absolutely. So your first title, what you won, the Queensland state title, how massive a moment was that for you? You felt all the jubilation against Narelle Leahy back in 2013, I think it was.
Yeah, so basically we had, for that fight, we had an offer. I think there was talks about a world title, and then we just threw that fight in. At that point, that fight I fought for free and paid my.
Really? Wow.
So I mean, like when people talk about working my way up and doing things the hard way. I literally paid my opponent's purse.
Yeah.
So, and these are the things, like, to me, like, I'm a fighter. I don't believe in just going to try. I want to fight. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, if I don't take these opportunities that are kind of half-assed there, well, then I don't fight. And that's even worse. So, yeah, I've definitely done things the hard way.
Yeah. Then if you don't take the opportunity too, you might miss the opportunity and someone go, you're not ready for it, or you don't want it, or it might pass you by and never get it again.
I took that world title fight. I think she was having her 7th defense, a girl from Korea, and it was at featherweight, so it wasn't even my division, and I took it on 3 weeks' notice, and I gave her a hell of a fight.
Yeah. So what about your first world title? You picked up the featherweight one there. So she was Korean, was she, that girl? So Gabrielle Shabalala?
Still a world champion, the Korean, Hwanmi Choi. She's still a current super featherweight world champion. But yeah, not long after that one, we went to South Korea, and I mean, there was a build up to it. I mean, they tried to scare me a bit, but my coach at the time was South African, so really believe that they were telling me there was going to be lions roaming around my hotel. I mean, the way it ended, I mean, the girl got taken out on a stretcher, and then the next day asked for a rematch. So go figure.
So how do you prepare yourself physically? So this wasn't in my list of questions, but how do you prepare yourself physically after you've been like so heavily knocked around? Because I've got no doubt you get heavily knocked around, busted bones, fingers, knuckles, the whole box and dice. How do you lift yourself up? Because I know you need to train to recover to be able to keep pushing on. Otherwise, you fall behind. So, and how do you prepare yourself for a fight? No, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get busted in that. How does that work as well?
Well, I've not really ever had any injury other than my shoulder. I've not had any injuries from fights. I mean, I've been split before. I mean, in saying that, I've had 80 fights and I've had 2 lots of stitches. So, I've been split. I've come out with black eyes, but it's all just part of it. Like, I'm not fazed by things like that. You know, if anything, it's facing my kids when they were little, when I had a black eye, but they understand, they know what it's about. I don't think, like, they wouldn't, that's just normal life for them.
Don't get hit.
Pardon?
Don't get hit.
I like that.
One of my biggest that I mean, I was knocked out cold 5 years ago. It was my last loss to Helen Joseph, and I was out cold, and my son was ringside, and okay, he was crying, and people are saying, oh, how could you do that? How could you put your kids through that? And for me, I'm glad he was there. I'm glad he saw me down and out, like I was unconscious for a couple of seconds, and he saw me get back up, and I kept fighting. I mean, not in that fight, but I came back, and I was more determined. I was back at training a week later, and for me, I was teaching my son that you can be at your lowest point and you've got to keep going. So anyone that sort of puts boxing down or puts women in boxing down for doing that sort of thing, like, I'm teaching my kids that life is a fight and you've got to keep going. You don't always win it.
So you're the #1 contender in Australia, #3 in the world. So who works out the rank? How do they work out the rankings? So, because I know, like, you've got the 4 different levels. You've got WBC, WBO, IBF, and what's the other one? WIBF. So, yeah. So how does that work? How does the ranking system work? Going up through fights. So,
You want me to do that one?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the 4 main commissions: WBC, WBO, WBA, and IBF. Each of those has a champion who holds the belt, and directly underneath that, there is a #1 challenger who ultimately should become the mandatory for the champion. In other words, once you win the belts, you're expected at some stage to fight the #1 contender. Shannon is the current #1 contender for the IBF and for the WBA. I've got to get them right because there's 3 of them: WBC, WBO, WBA. Always get them confused. and she's ranked highly in the others as well. So look, the rankings are done over a multiple. There's multiple systems that put you into these positions, and it's all based on basically on a point system of who you fight and what position those people are in that you fight. So, for example, if Shannon fights in the course of 1 year 4 girls and they are all ranked in, let's say, the top 10, she will get maximum amount of points for those fights and her rankings will go up significantly. And if she wins them all, you're guaranteed she'll end up being the number 1. If she chooses to fight lesser, let's say numbers 30 to 40 in the rankings, the point score system's much less. And if she wins them, she'll still go up, but she might only go up a few points and might end up sitting at 15 in the rankings. If she loses any of these fights, of course, that's not good. That kicks you back down the rankings. So there's a sliding scale of how it works. But in Shannon's case, she has had 8 wins in a row, which means that she can't really be knocked out of the number 1 position on these two. And right now we are in a really strong position to go after 2 of those belts, one of which we've had mandated and the other we'll look at early in the new year. And then ultimately unify the others, because the champions do have that luxury of being able to unify against the other champions. And then like for Tim, same case, Tim gets to unify in what's called the undisputed category, which is top of the tree, where you fight the current champion who has all the belts.
Yeah.
And so that's how it works. So Shannon's worked very hard over a long period of time to become the number 1, and we worked very hard over 6 months to get her number 1 position mandated as the mandatory, and that gives you a guaranteed title shot.
So do all the other boxing companies, so like got WBA, WBO, WBC, IBF, do they frown down upon that pretty much? They don't really like it when they're all unified all the same time with the belts.
They don't really have a choice. If you've got a quality fighter that's capable of unifying and taking undisputed, that's the fighter's decision. That if he's that good that he's number 1 and he's fighting champions and taking their belts, there's nothing they can do about it. And most of the time when you get an undisputed champ, you'll find all the commissions come together anyway, because they get a thing called sanction fees and they make money off it, and it's substantial amounts. So there's a business part of it for them as well. But our plan is very simple. Shannon will fight in September for a world title. She'll win that. She'll move on for early next year for another world title. She'll win that, move on. Then we'll probably look to the other 2 girls that are left that hold belts and try to unify the 3rd, and then fight and then try to take the 4th and become undisputed. We can literally achieve all of that if we work hard in a 12 to 18 month period.
That's very massive. So it's huge, huge. How much will that change your life to become world champion, Shannon?
I mean, it'll be massive. It'll be, everything that I've worked for 20 years, my entire life, to be honest, because, like it'll be huge. And I believe that I'm good enough. I believe that I'm worthy of it, and I'm definitely worthy of the shot to try it. And I mean, taking them all out one by one is going to be so much better to me than just being handed something. I'd much rather fight the champions than have a vacant belt. Bridges is just the start. Yeah.
So I said tonight, so I run a sports show as well on local radio. That's how this has come about as well. So this interview later will go on to the radio. So it'll be very inspiring for a lot of young girls out there who might be thinking about getting into fighting and all that stuff as well. And I said it's massive what's happening. And you're from the Gold Coast, and Ebanie Bridges was originally from Sydney, but she's trained in Leeds at the moment. Where do you think that fight's going to end up happening when it happens?
You go with it, Shannon.
I personally, I hope it can be made for Australia. I don't care where in Australia, Brisbane, Sydney, whatever. But I mean, it makes the most sense to happen in Australia, whether she's living over there or not. She's from Australia, so it's 2 Australians fighting. It's going to get the most eyes on it here. And obviously we want it here, but we're willing, and I mean, they could send me to India and fight her. I don't care. I
love that enthusiasm. That's fabulous. So to have that and have the attitude to travel, because sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to go to. I always felt when I played sport for years and years, I'll never achieve what you did, but I got more enjoyment out of going to someone else's backyard and take the win now. That was more valuable than like any win at home any day ever. So I've only won a couple of grand finals ever, and they were playing at someone else's home ground, and it was like winning a World Cup final because just watched all their pissed off fans, and it just meant everything. So we did it, had to do it with the teammates, and you're up against it. It's great. So I love that.
I mean, regardless of where it is, obviously I would much rather it be in Australia, because to be able to do that with my kids and my family and friends and everyone that's supported me over the years to get to this point, to have them there would be amazing. So obviously I'd much rather Australia, but as long as the fight's on, I don't care where they send me.
Yeah, that's right. So all right, Ebanie Bridges, who's the next fight? Who are you looking at after that? You've got Jamie Mitchell's holds the WBA. Yulihan Luna's got the WBC. Adina Forsland's got the WBA. What belt are you looking at next?
I'll leave that one to Glen.
Any of them.
Yeah.
It really comes down to a movement issue. Once Shannon wins her first belt, the other champions certainly won't be sitting around waiting to see. They keep on moving along as Shannon will. So, look, it'll come down to a whole new negotiation. We'll start all over again. We'll find out who's available and who wants it, and we go from there. So boxing's not a sport where you can really plan much further forward than the fight that's in front of you, because everybody that's good at what they do is busy, and they're all taking fights, they're all making money, and they're all trying to better themselves. So it doesn't matter who's next out of the three other champions. It'll be one of them. But I can tell you now, I could ring Shannon in January 10th next year and say, you're fighting, you're going to fight Jamie Mitchell, and she'll say, okay, where and when, and that's all that matters, and she'll go. But I guess the nice part too is that in that short period of time that we've started this journey together, Shannon now for the first time in her life for the last 6 months has been a full-time professional fighter, and so she has great sponsorship support that we've brought into place that support her and allow her to do that. So it would be wonderful for us to be able to give something back to them and all of our fans, because she has a massive fan base, to do it here in Australia. It makes the most commercial sense to do it here in Australia. I believe we'll get the bigger bums on seats, more people, and the pay-per-view will be so much bigger. But you have to understand that the champion is signed to a British Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, and they are in the driver's seat. But that doesn't stop us from negotiating very hard to bring it home, and we believe we've got a very strong case based on the fact that it's commercially sound.
Yeah, there you go. So you got a strong case, and against the other world champions, I had a look at your knockout record is really good compared to them. Some of the fights you won, you're just under 50% knockout record. And there's, I think Forsland, hers is fairly good, but you got the best by a bit over the others, and you're a bit taller than the other girls. Do you like that? Do you like knowing that you've got that in your armory? You've got the knockout ability, and a little bit taller can give you a bit of extra reach and that sort of stuff. Use that as an advantage, or that's not how you plan on tackling the fights in particular?
Oh, look, I mean, I know that I can punch, but I can also box too. I had 50 amateur fights. So I guess, I think the only thing that I know that I've got that I'm not really worried about what they've got. I know that I've got a finishing instinct. So I know that if I can box, but if I've got someone hurt, I'm going to go for the kill. So I mean, to me, I'm not overly fussed about what everyone else brings, because I know what I bring and I'm confident in that.
Yeah. So who's been your biggest influence in the fight game in your life? Me.
As crazy of an answer as that is, like, people always say, who motivates you? Me, I motivate me. There's not, it's really, I don't really, I mean, I love, well, as random as it is to say now, it seems a little bit funny, but my favorite fighter for years was Tszyu. Then, I loved Manny Pacquiao. Now I love Canelo. But I don't, there's not really anyone that's influenced what I've done to this point. Yeah, it's I'm the one that I get up every day. I push myself. I do everything that I do to make my life and my kids' life better. So, it's sort of a hard answer.
Yeah, no, that's all right. But you would need to drive yourself. If you're not motivating yourself, well, you got to get someone to get you out of bed and get you up every day and look at a poster to get you firing.
What she meant to say was my manager.
Yeah, now.
Look, no, honestly, the safest answer there is she's dead right. I mean, this is a girl who's not like most others. There's nothing I can tell her. There's nothing her coaches can tell her that will change the way she thinks and believes in herself. And that is the beauty of and why she is where she is. There aren't many athletes who, they haven't even got a date, and they know that it's coming up, and they're waiting on my call to say you've got this date, who are up at 4 o'clock running in the dark. That doesn't happen. This girl does that. And these are the things that make her what she is. And that's purely driven by her own mental belief in herself and her own heart. And there's very few athletes like that. And that's why I said early that I admired and followed her from a distance, because it was clear to me that she was so far above and beyond most athletes that I've seen. And she reminds me very, very much of a young Team Tszyu, who just lives, breathes, and eats and sleeps boxing. And although she does it in a much tougher set of circumstances as a single mum of 3 kids. So on top of what she does and what she achieves, she's also got a massive role of responsibility at home with the kids. So she gets my vote, and I think that's the reason why I'm attracted to the fact that I want to make sure I can do the best for her and get the best outcome for when it's all said and done.
Yeah. So how many professional women's boxers are there in Australia and in the world at the moment that would be like fighting in the round bantamweight? Because I know you could go up and down, drop a couple of kilos here or there, and then you go up or down flyweight or up super bantamweight or go up into featherweight or whatever. Is there a lot of fighters in your category at the moment?
I have no idea. I am only the ones that are in front of me, to be honest. Yeah. And there's only 2 of them. So
yeah.
I mean, there's a box rec listing of 20 to 50 fighters from 1 to 50, and the girls will have names there, but there's a lot of new interest in boxing in the last few years, especially the females. And right now, female boxing worldwide is just red hot. So we're seeing a whole new generation coming in on the back of what Shannon's achieved. And I see it. I see it every time we go somewhere, whether she's at one of our, she's a member of our team. So she comes to all our Team Tszyu shows. She supports Tim and Nikita as they do her. And so whenever she comes down for an appearance, she gets smashed from young girls and people wanting photos with her. So there's a whole new world of people coming in. But if you look at the rankings and you look at the fight stats on most of the girls, you'll see there are an awful lot. It's very much weighed heavily in favour of the rookies, and that's girls under 10 fights. So that's a good thing, because we're in a whole new golden era of women's boxing starting to elevate. And those young girls, every single fight are getting better and better and better. And the time will come when Shannon's no longer competitive, but I tell you, she'll be coaching them and she'll be bringing these young girls along, and they will all have that admiration. But it's exciting, man. I mean, Shannon will tell you, I'll ask her the question, Shannon, it wasn't that long ago women's boxing couldn't even get an advertising space or a sponsor or even a 3 2-minute rounds on a male card.
No, not at all. I mean, even as an amateur, I'm from South Australia, so I moved to Queensland purely because in South Australia, when I was boxing, there was 2 registered females as amateurs. There was no professionals, but two amateurs in the entire state. So I moved to Queensland because it was a lot bigger and better up here. But even now, like everywhere you go, like there's almost like at least 2 in every gym now, not every state.
Yeah. Well, we had last Wednesday night at Nikita's fight in Sydney that Shannon came down to. We had 4 female fights on the card.
Yeah, that's big.
It's unheard of, mate. And
Yeah.
and to be honest, I mean, credit where it's due. The girls that have done the yards, the Shannon O'Connells of the world, are the ones responsible for this. They are the ones leading the race. The young girls that contact us through our social medias, which just go non-stop. It's all about they're inspired by what Shannon's doing. They all want to go to the fight. They all want to be part of this world title, and there's nothing better. That's for me the birth of a whole new era of new girls that are going to come in on the back of this, and you can't get better. Boxing in Australia, generally male and female right now, has never been in a better place. I don't believe since Kosty's days. Yeah,
it's in a very good place, and like I say, I remember it was probably only about 12 before the Olympics when you would have fought in 2000. Was it the 2012 Olympics you fought in, Shannon?
I've not been to the Olympics. No, I turned pro because I was actually part of a team that they were sort of getting ready for the Olympic qualifiers, and they said that they were taking the top 8 in the world. So all I basically had to do was win at Australian level, and I was in. But then I was on a 4-week trip around Europe, and 3 weeks in, I sort of said, 3 weeks in, I was like, I can't do this. I needed to go home. I missed my kids too much, and you know that they basically explained to us we had to move to the AIS, and with no funding, pretty much. I think they were giving us $50 a week or $50 a month or something ridiculous. And I had a mortgage. I've got kids. And I was like, well, I'm not moving to Canberra, that's for sure. So I came home and turned professional. And as funny as it is, my first professional fight was my now coach was the promoter.
Oh, really? There you go.
Yeah, it's a small world.
It's an interesting world. So what message would you like to give to any young girls or young women that might be watching this or listening to this tonight or when I put it up on the podcast?
Probably just, no matter what you are doing, whether it's boxing or not, like it's hard. And if you want to reach the top, you got to stick to it. But it's definitely, as long as you're doing it for yourself and all the right reasons, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely not easy.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So I like that there are a lot of people. So a lot of people have said to me, they look at you as like I do. I look as an example because I just got old, lazy and retired from sport and then just chuck weight on. You are a very good role model like for health and looking after yourself, well-being and everything like that, and recovery from major operations and everything. I thank you for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. So if you win these title fights, I think that you will. I think you probably win 1, 2. I'd love to see you win 4. That'd be fantastic. Would she be the first Australian fighter that's won all 4 titles, unified all of them in any division, men's or women's, Glen?
Yes, she will be. She's already, for me and for a lot of people, already considered, the queen of Australian boxing. And look, I'll even go so far as to say, with her record, what she's achieved and what's about to happen, when we're finished, she will be considered the GOAT, the greatest of all time in the female. And that's a background goal that I would love to help her achieve. But more importantly, I'd love to see her healthy and happy and go through and win these titles and get rewarded for them. We've got a financial plan in place for her to get her to a great place so that the kids are well looked after when she's done. And when she's got them all and she can turn around and we'll have a coffee and she'll say one day, that'll do me. And that will be it. And Shannon O'Connell will be remembered and go out of the active side of the sport as the greatest. And she'll have a bonza career that I'll have ready and waiting for her, set up in training and in commentary. And she'll never be out of boxing. She lives for this sport. And whilst ever I'm in it, she'll be involved in it. And I'm sure together we'll be managing a lot of younger people, her as a coach, me as a manager, as we go forward. So there's only good things happening for this girl. She's in a great place in her life, and I'm proud and happy to play a small role in it. So stay tuned, everybody listening in, because get on board Shannon's Shannon's train, because this is going to be a hell of a ride. And jump onto her Facebook and follow everything we do. We work the social medias pretty hard between us, and we keep everybody updated. And Shannon's merchandise is available. It's all there. Jump on and have fun with us and come along for the ride. You won't regret it. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I appreciate it very much. So I'm nobody to anybody in particular, but I just love someone that's got a good story to tell, a particularly Australian-based sports person, and want to promote a story. I think that yours is a great story to tell, and it's exciting following. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, just can't wait. One last question, Shannon. If you had a cheat meal, what's your cheat meal? So when you go, I don't have to flight at the moment. I can go and eat anything I want, and it doesn't matter. What is that going to be?
I love McDonald's. I don't eat. I'm in a 10-week.
No.
I give myself that first 2 weeks where I'm like, and then I go, bam, 8 weeks out. I don't touch it. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not overly strict in the way of, I have. If I want tomato sauce on my food, I'll have it. Like, I'm not overly strict in that. I train hard enough to if I want a bit of chocolate, I'll have it. But I don't eat takeaway greasy food. And but I literally, after nearly every single fight I've ever had, I go straight to Macca's afterwards. Some I go to McDonald's.
Yeah, and it's my shout.
And it's funny. It's actually funny because when you haven't eaten McDonald's for 2 months, it tastes awful. But after 2 or 3 shots, it comes good again.
Sausage and egg McMuffin, chocolate fig shake. Try that in the morning. Comes up good. With world title belt over your shoulder, driving through. I'll get sausage and egg McMuffin. Oh, by the way, I'm the world champion. How good would that be? Fabulous. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much. And yeah, I will definitely be in touch and keep following with bated breath, waiting for this fight to come up and see where we go from the future with this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your support, mate. We appreciate the fact that you took the time yourself to have a chat to us, and yeah, good of you to do that, and good luck with everything you do. And Shan, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes.
Good night.